Let's stay. Let's stay on Friday and head to prime time out west for the Civil War, when Oregon will host Oregon State. Oregon close to a 2-touchdown favorite here. This game Friday night in Eugene, over under 62.5. Bo Nix last week, 6 touchdowns in the first half. By the way, I'm seeing that Daniels is the Heisman favorite now. I could not have been more turned off by what Daniels and LSU were doing last week. Begging to get, here's the thing. People say, well, Daniels can't help the fact that his defense stinks. Yeah, but he's also getting possessions all the way into the end of the game.
Yeah.
Because they can't get a stop. Nix could have 12 touchdowns last week.
Yep.
If they're not blowing out these teams. Daniels begging and going in and running up fake stats, hollow stats against Georgia State. That does nothing for me as a Heisman voter. So I'm sorry. Well, I ultimately think that Daniels isn't going to be playing the last weekend. Nix will be playing Washington. He wins that game. It's a good performance. I think Nix is going to win the Heisman.
Shout out to my friends over at The Athletic. They put together a Heisman straw poll every year, and it's shocked me the last 2 years how accurate it's been. Like, they're doing this weeks leading up, and they grade it on a point basis, like a 3-2-1, first, second, third place. Bo Nix had a comfortable lead on Jaden Daniels in their straw poll. So considering how accurate it's been the last couple of years, I absolutely 100% don't care that the odds are now favoring Jaden Daniels, because the people that are in charge of a large voice of the Heisman voters are saying it's all Bo Nix. So I don't know. We'll see how many touchdowns. I mean, he's still got 2 games to go. Oregon can't lose, so we'll see.
Yeah, he can't lose. But Daniels won't be playing that weekend. So if Oregon wins out, right, I think it's Nix's. But Oregon State, I played Oregon State plus 14, play them down to 13. There's a couple games that I'm going to get to throughout here. It's similar to the last week of the NFL regular season when I always play this angle. There's a bunch of teams that are in must-win spots, right? Got to win for the Pac-12 championship. If Oregon loses this game and Arizona wins, Arizona goes to the Pac-12 championship. Arizona, by the way, Pac-12 South champs. They just, as Jed Fish said, they just happened to change the rule this year. But Oregon State, look, I mean, last week they're favored at home against Washington, and they were the better team, 70% post-game win expectancy. Now you're catching 2 touchdowns. I know this may be a little bit of a letdown, but this is the Civil War. This is their in-state rival, and they're going to be up for this game. They could ruin Oregon's season. Also, if you look at Oregon, they've just demolished a bunch of inferior teams this season. But if you look at teams that are, close to their level, the Texas Techs, the Washingtons, the USCs, I mean, they haven't beat anybody by more than 2 touchdowns. So, and look, Oregon's run D has some holes from an efficiency standpoint. So I think Oregon State will be able to move it a bit, control the clock here. And I mean, Jonathan Smith catching 2 touchdowns in a rivalry game, for what it's worth. Let me pull up his stats. He's 14-6, 70% against the spread as a road underdog, covering by a touchdown per game. I think this is inflated due to an unlucky loss last week that Oregon State had, and then just everyone's, seeing Oregon of late, knowing that they have to win. I think it's too many points. I think this thing will be fairly competitive throughout. I like the Beavers. What do you think?
I make it 12, so I do think the number is a little inflated. It would tell me that there's value on Oregon State, but there is a serious problem in this game for the Beavers. A serious problem. So one point that you have to handicap is the fact that Oregon State misses tackles like there is no tomorrow. They are graded 131st per PFF in tackle grading. That gets worse when you look at broken tackles allowed, 130th. Sorry, similar, but it's still bad. Tackling is a huge problem. You go back into their box scores, right? They missed 9 tackles against Washington. That's not good. Go back to Arizona a few weeks ago. Oregon State missed 20 tackles. That's really bad. That's like worst in the nation. So you think, well, that's going to be a problem every game. And they were able to stick around with Washington and keep it to a 2-point game. The problem is when you face Oregon. Oregon is second in the nation in creating missed tackles with their elite wide receiver duo of Troy Franklin, their slot Tez Johnson, their running back Bucky Irving. These guys are elusive machines. Getting hands on them is tough, toughest in the nation. This is the biggest discrepancy I've ever seen in broken tackles created versus broken tackles allowed. And that is going to, I mean, we can handicap this left and right, passing trees, run concepts, all of this. But the fact of the matter is, Oregon State is just not tackling people whatsoever. Now, they run a heavy amount of rushing attempts, the Beavers do, in outside zone. And that's really been the Oregon defense's bread and butter. I mean, they are a low success rate, low amount of explosives. We can argue the kind of rush offenses that Oregon's faced up to this point, but those are the two things that really keep me off this Oregon State, which, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about playing Oregon on the team total over, just for the simple fact of the missed tackles. Oregon State could probably keep up and cover the spread, but I don't have to worry about that. Really, this whole missed tackles thing is such a huge problem for Oregon State, and it's not going away. So I do think the number's inflated, though. If you had to play the side, I'd lean Oregon State.
Yeah, I mean, I think Oregon's going to have success moving the ball here. I mean, they don't really throw it downfield a ton, which is good for.
Oh, Bo Nix
Oregon
is like the
State.
lowest A dot in the nation. Like it's
Yeah,
really,
that's
like 6.
that's good for Oregon State because their corners aren't the greatest covering downfield, as we saw against Adunze last week. But yeah, missed tackles could be a major issue if Oregon State isn't buttoned up here.